Hello there, guys and girls. Welcome to Hacking Self Storage. Today, I have another awesome guest, and this guy is such a nice guy. I've only met him once in person, and he's got that smile and that presence that he just makes people feel comfortable, and he's just a lovely, lovely human being. It is none other than Tron from the Hawaiian Unconference. He is the guy who's putting on that conference, and it's a place where I hope to be in October. Fingers crossed we're allowed to go. But Tron's not only that. Tron talks about on this podcast, he's a sales expert, he's a marketing expert, he's an acquisition expert, he's a feasibility studies expert. We talk about all that in this podcast and more. And it's just a great chat. I've had him on the podcast before. I didn't want to ask him the same questions. So we've got a whole host of different questions to go through with him. And he's just an expert in his own right on sales, on marketing, on feasibility, on acquisitions, anything to do with self-storage. This man is the expert. And the great thing about Tron is that he keeps it simple. This is what I love about him. I asked him one question about feasibilities and what a first-time buyer or operator would look at when you first come into the industry and you're looking at setting up your first self-storage facility. And he said, it depends on you. It starts with you. It depends what you want. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so good, because so many people just run in there and don't really know what they want, don't really know the impact it's going to have on life. Do you want to be an operator? Do you want to be an investor? Do you want somebody to run it for you? Are you the person who's going to be running the self-storage? And so you've got to have these questions answered before you dive in. And so many people don't, but just dive in and just hopefully work it out along the way. But what sort of character are you? Who do you want to be? What sort of business do you want to own? And it starts with you. Anyway, there's so much gold in this. I'm going to pause it right now and I'm going to get into this podcast. Enjoy this podcast. I'm sure you will do. Here is Tron. I don't know why I'm doing this with my fingers. I'm like pointing, woo! It's like Ant and Dec. All right, here's Tron. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. So Tron, thank you so much for your time again. A second time visitor to this podcast. Thank you, buddy, for coming on.
I love it. I love repeats and referrals. What a way to go, man. Great to be here, Dean.
Cheers, Tron. So for people who don't know about you, can we just have a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yes, sure. So I've been in the self-storage business about 20 years, and I've worked on some amazing call center projects. I've been the chief of sales and marketing for a large international self-storage company. I've worked for an independent group where we bought, managed, developed sites. I work as a consultant on all kinds of things self-storage. I end up getting involved in a lot of call center things because call centers are important and I've got a lot of background there. But I'm also always looking for acquisition opportunities and other interesting projects to get into. And I guess my pet project is the Self Storage Hawai'i Unconference, which is a gathering of self-storage VIPs from all over the place in an amazing place, the big island of Hawaii. So you can find out about me on LinkedIn. That's probably an easy place to go find me and check it out. Or you can go to selfstoragestrategies.com and check that out and then find out everything about me. So, and I'm thrilled to be here with you, Dean. And I love talking shop and learning new things. And you know, you talk to so many interesting people. It's really fun to hear some of the things that keep coming up. It's great.
Yeah, do you know what, Tron? I'm very, very lucky and blessed to be able to speak to the people I do, because obviously we can't network anymore. We currently can't go to any conferences at the minute in the UK. But for those of people who are listening to the podcast and can't see this, Tron's actually got a picture just to rub it into us English folk, because we can't travel. He's got a picture of a fantastic conference, the Hawaiian Unconference that he's going to be doing. Is it in October, Tron, is it?
Yes, so it's October 17th to 23rd that week on the big island of Hawaii at the Marriott Waikoloa Resort. It's as lovely as it sounds.
We'll get to that in a minute, but oh my God, the picture looks absolutely amazing just to rub it all in. So Tron, I was doing some research before this podcast, and I I always thought that you was the sales expert, but then I realized that you're a marketing expert, then acquisitions, and then feasibility studies, and then the Hawaiian Unconference. Where is your area of specialty? What's your favorite area of the self-storage industry?
Well, I think I end up falling back into sales and marketing a lot because that's the driver of things, right? You can have a beautiful facility, and if you don't know how to sell it and don't know how to market it, it just isn't, it sits there and is beautiful and doesn't do anything. So I keep falling back into that. And my background before I came into self-storage was all about sales and marketing. So I end up falling back into that. And everything for me kind of revolves around that anyway. Right? When you're looking for acquisitions, it's the same thing as selling, right? You're trying to find somebody who might want to sell their property, and you have to develop some kind of rapport and find a win-win-win situation with them. And, so a lot of things just come back to selling, and that's where I end up many times.
Do you know what? I couldn't agree more. I always tell my kids that sales, you're selling all the time. You're selling at school, trying to get away with the homework that you haven't done. You're selling when you meet a partner, trying to get them to go on a date with you, and then be in a relationship with you. I'm selling my kids all the time, trying to get them to do something for me. And I think that is one of the most underutilized skills in the world, because we don't know it, but we're selling all the time. We're selling people every single day of every single second of every single hour. And so it's so important. With your self-storage consultant business, what's the biggest changes that you've seen during these COVID times then, Tron?
Well, so during COVID times, the big change has been an accelerated movement into automated, contactless, touchless rentals and customer management. Right? So many of us operators had already in place really good, I guess what we now call contactless self-service methods available, because so many people just love shopping online, and so many people don't really feel like they need to speak to someone. So many of us had those things in place. And then when all this COVID madness hit, we were able to just quickly reset and do everything contactless and self-service. But many operators were not ready for it. They had still been resisting the entire online funnel process. And so they had to move really quickly when the COVID madness started. And that's really been the big shift. And it's changed people's thinking. A lot of people just didn't believe that they could push 90% of their business to online or in-app, and they're shocked that it has happened and that customers have accepted it. So that's really, I think, the biggest change that's come from that. Maybe the second biggest change that came from that is a little bit the flip side of that, where people have really appreciated what their employees and their staff and their team can do and will do. So I think it's an interesting kind of, two sides of the mirror thing. On the one hand, we figured out, well, we don't need people. We just need a great website and a great app. And on the other hand, we're thinking, oh my gosh, we need people more than ever, because, we've got all these things to do, and our people have so much to do and have to wear so many hats. And so it's been kind of an interesting split in how people have been thinking about it.
Yeah, it really has. I always think that there's companies that have had the COVID bump. There's industries that have certainly benefited, and there's industries that have fallen away because of it, like the wedding industry. My family's in the wedding industry. They've had
oh gosh.
Yeah, it's been absolutely terrible for them, and we've had a COVID bump. We've never ever had a better time of it. We've had 3 years worth of growth in 6 months and 3 months. It's been it's been absolutely phenomenal for us. But then I feel so sorry for my family, because it's nothing that they can do. Do you think that when the world opens up again, do you think that the self-storage companies will continue down the path of automation and continue trying to push people to sign up online, or do you think people will automatically start coming back into the offices again and signing up?
I think it depends on the operator. I think there's some operators who are deliberately never going back to a full service model. And then I think others are using this opportunity to really fine tune their contactless systems, so that when it's time to go back to a full service model, their contactless system and their full service models will be equally as pleasant and frictionless for customers, right? So I think we have some operators who are saying, I don't ever want to have a customer again who wants to talk to someone live. And they're creating their own little subset of the market, right? So, and then I think you have other operators who say, I don't care what your shopping preference is. I'm going to have a way for you to have a smooth experience with us. And your preference can be any of the 10 things we do well. I don't care, right? So I think we're seeing that happening. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually, I don't know if you know, but we're opening our next store, and they've just started on Monday. So they've just put spades in the ground on Monday, and
wow,
yeah, really excited. It's going to be a manless facility. Now, obviously, no self-storage is absolutely manless because we still need somebody to, repair stuff and clean, etc. But yeah, it will be a fully automated facility where people can sign up. And it's the first one I've ever done where people can actually sign up from start to finish on the website, and they don't have to, if they don't want, talk to any member of staff. Obviously, we've got a call center, call team, if they so wish. But it's really exciting times, and the research that I've done about the technology and learning what works, what doesn't, how much things cost, it's phenomenal, really, what you can do with technology nowadays. I feel like there's been such an advance, and people, not only that, but people are willing to take this on board, where before there probably wasn't as willing to do the customers because they maybe wanted to come in to speak to a customer, see somebody. But now people are taking it on board more because of COVID. They've been more used to it and they don't necessarily want to come in and speak to somebody. Are you finding that more as well at your end?
Oh, yes. We're seeing very much the same trend. And it's interesting. And, back to my call center background, that we've also found through all this that the call centers become so much more important because it has become the management hub for these contactless systems, where it's the call center agent who's managing the property and managing all the customer interactions. And that's worked out well because they're in a good position to do that. Yeah. And then I think we'll see that continue as things start to open up again. I think we'll see that continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So on to sales then, one of your favorite subjects. Because people listening, I'm a great believer is if we can tweak something in the sales process, then we can increase our revenue massively just by that one tweak, 1% here, 1% there. And if we can dial it in the sales process, make sure we get them questions right when we're first talking to a customer. There's something that I've been reading about recently when it's features and benefits. So for example, somebody who is storing something for a year and they're going traveling, they don't care if you've got 24-hour access. They don't care if they can access a good 7 days a week because they don't want to. What they want to talk about is the benefits for them. So it might be security. It might be for the fact if they pay for a year, they get 5% off the overall bill or 10% or whatever it is. And so we've got to match up the benefits and the features to the actual customer. And so that's what I've been trying to learn more about recently and just talk to, rather than say, yeah, we've got 24-hour access, but they don't really care about 24-hour access. So we've got to match up what suits the customer. Is there any in the sales process where mistakes that you see that some self-storages tend to fall down at all the time?
Yeah. So one thing is this whole features and benefit thing, because years ago when I was running the larger call center, we noticed a shift in how customers were thinking. There was a time when everyone wanted to hear about features and benefits, because they didn't know that much about self-storage, and a lot of self-storage places were still sort of the first generation of self-storage in the States. So people wanted to know that there was a gate and there was a pin pad they had to use to come and go. They wanted to know about those things. And you could paint some pictures of them to give them the feeling of ownership, right? So we could say, we've got a pin pad for entering, so only our tenants can come and go, and that'll make you feel safer on the property and things like that. And then we got to a point where people didn't want to hear about that anymore. And I kind of compare that to automobiles. If you were going to buy a car today, if the automobile salesperson said, you're going to love this car because it's got windshield wipers, it's got tires, It's got a spare tire in the back. You'd think, what is happening? Right. So I think people have developed an expectation of what self-storage should be, and there's no reason to hammer them with features that they already expect. And then in relation to that, I think many times salespeople just love to info dump on people.
Yeah.
Right. Where they've got where their boss told them, we spent, $27 million on this property, and I want people to know we've got, LED lights and automatic temperature control and 17-foot high gates. And so then the salesperson says to everyone, hey, we've got LED lights and automatic temperature control and 17-foot high gates. And the customer is thinking, why are they telling me this? What does this have to do with the couch I need to put away for a year? Right. So I think it goes back to something I like to talk about. It's called the first rule of selling. Right. And the first rule of selling is you can't sell anybody anything, but you can help people talk themselves into buying just about anything. And so if you hammer them with features, then they just go, oh my gosh, this sucks, and they go away. But if you can, as you say, get them to talk about why they called you in the first place or what they're trying to do, then you can just kind of encourage that thinking, and they've pretty soon talked themselves into renting from you.
Yeah. So what their needs are, find out what their needs are. And then once you get their needs, then you can elaborate on that conversation more. So when you first go to a company and you help with the sales process, what do you start looking at first of all? Do you start looking at the process they currently do, or ways to improve it? Do you put in your own process first of all? What do you do?
So I always look and see what's there, because my first goal on a consulting job is to not break anything, right? Because it's so, I call it, sweater pulls. It's so easy to find pieces of yarn in an operation and start yanking on them. And pretty soon you've pulled the whole sweater apart. And so that's my first goal, is don't break anything.
Yeah.
So come in and watch and listen. And I like to look at two things. I like to look at process, and then I like to look at people. So process is, what's the technology? How does it work? How does everything interact with everything else? Because many times the process is what makes it possible for the people to sell well. And if the process is all screwed up, it doesn't matter how much sales training you do. If the process won't let them do it right, then, you're in trouble. Then the other thing I look at is people. How are the staff talking to people? How are the customers reacting to things that happen? Because in many ways, it doesn't matter what you say or do. What matters is what the customer says and does. I mean, you can say something that sounds completely stupid, and if the customer says, "Oh, great idea, I'm going to come rent right now," well, then it wasn't that stupid, whatever you said, right? So those are the things I look at. I look at what's the process look like, what are all the workflows, how do things integrate both online and offline together, and then what's going on with people. And then based on that, there's always some quick wins, always. And then usually there's some fundamental system errors, because we have so many systems in play that compete with each other, don't play nice with each other, don't integrate right. So getting some of that fixed is important. And then there's always, on the people side, easy wins to make in how people talk with customers, how they listen to customers. And then, you can build off of that.
Yeah, I love that. One of the tips that I always say to people is that when about our sales process, I always, if I've got 5 or 10 minutes, this sounds sad I am, I will literally pick up the phone and I will ring another self-storage company. I will Google London self-storage or Manchester self-storage or anywhere in the UK. I will look at a company that I don't know anything about, and I'll pick up the phone and I'll pretend I'm a customer. And so I try, obviously, because of your knowledge you've got of the self-storage industry, it's hard to put yourself in the customer's shoes, but I will try my very, very best. And then I will think, okay, how did they make me feel? And then I'll write it down and I'll share it with the team, and I'll make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. You can always improve by listening and watching somebody else. And I'm sure that if somebody did that to us, we could certainly improve as well. But I think that's a
Right.
great exercise to do, where you can just take it away. You can spend 5 to 10 minutes on the phone speaking to another self-storage operator, and sometimes you'll walk away and think, oh, do you know what, we are pretty good, or do you know what, I love what they did there, I'm going to implement that in our sales process. And it's them little tweaks here and there, them continuous improvements that make all the difference.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think you're spot on. If you walk away thinking, how did they make me feel? You're going to come up with the right stuff every time. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, awesome. So marketing, I want to quickly touch on marketing. What mistakes do you see that people make in marketing, and you think, oh, do you know what, that's one thing we're definitely not going to do. We're not going to spend money here. How would you help somebody? How would you help another self-storage company when you look at their marketing?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to a couple things. So it comes down to the actual on-site experience, right? So what is it like to be on your property and do things at your property? So having a customer service, or a customer experience audit is really important. To go through all the steps and find where the friction is, to find where it's not quite right. And some people might say, well, that's not really marketing, but no, it is marketing, because the first few interactions someone has with you really determines how they feel about you. And that's big. The other piece of it is, we sometimes forget that in the end, we all work for Google. No matter who we are, what business we're in, we all work for Google. And we have to be aware of that and understand that and be sensitive and do our best to make Google happy, so Google shines on us with good results when people are searching for us. And so anything you can do to make your Google presence better, working on your Google My Business page, doing things on your website, doing things on your social media to make Google happy. That's what it's all about. We just have to make Google happy. And if we're doing that, then we'll get to where you can then think about some interesting things. Well, what are we going to do for offline marketing that's fun and interesting? Or what else can we do with our website that would make people stay an extra minute? And, things like that.
Yeah, do you know what, Tron? I absolutely love that, because there's so many people who try to overcomplicate marketing. I'm in a mastermind group and we all talk about marketing, how we're going to get people there. And fundamentally, the biggest thing that I can do, 72% of my quotes come from Google. So they come from Google, the quotes come from Google, over 50% of my customers come from Google. And so, do you know what? I've got to feed the beast. Unfortunately, I've got to play that game. I'm not going to waste my time running around trying to find the other things where I can get my quotes from. I want to make sure that I am represented well on Google. It's optimized. My Google My Business pages is as good as it possibly can be. The reviews are there, and it stands out as much as it possibly can do on Google. Once I've got that sorted, then I don't mind looking at other places. But there's so many people who try to overcomplicate it and say, right, let's try to diversify where we get the quotes from. Yeah, in an ideal world, absolutely, of course we will do. But unfortunately, Google is the king. And that's where all the quotes are going to come from, or majority of the quotes are going to come from, because it's an intent. It has to be an intent for self-storage. And so when there's an intent for self-storage, they go to Google first of all. As soon as an intent for anything, it's Google, unless it's a how-to video, and then they go to YouTube. So for me, again, it's not sexy, but I go to Google. And then another thing we try and do is, a lot of my customers are returning customers or referrals. So it sounds silly, but marketing for me starts with your current customers, because I need to make sure that them customers are walking, talking billboards of my business when they leave, and they feel obligated to talk about, when somebody says self-storage, yeah, store more, go to store more. And so I want my customers to feel obligated. And I think if you nail them to Google and your current customers, then you're doing far greater than the majority of people.
Yep. You're absolutely right. The current customers is a huge piece of that. You think about it this way. If you're getting 30% of your customers from repeats and referrals, and your competitor down the street is getting 10% from repeats and referrals, there's no contest as to who's got a better business. Right? It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also noticed in my extensive research that I did on you that you also do feasibility studies as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people listening to this podcast who have been a lot of real estate podcasts recently, and so
Hmm.
there's a lot of people coming from different asset classes who are looking at self storage, and so people are now trying to open up their first self storage facility. And one of the most
Right.
the biggest question I probably get most frequent is, where do I start? What do I do? How do I look for a facility? So what would you say what advice would you give to somebody who's looking at starting the very, very first self-storage business? What are the biggest things that people need to factor in for the feasibility study that people sometimes oversee and miss it?
Yeah. So I think you have to know yourself first. You have to know what kind of an investor are you? What kind of a business operator are you? And you've got to then find the type of property or the type of self-storage business that's going to suit you. Otherwise, you're just going to be frustrated. You're not going to know what to do, and it's going to be unpleasant. So I think you have to know yourself first.
That's a great point.
And yeah, because and that's one of the first things I do when I talk to someone about doing a study for them. And sometimes I do what I call a quick look, which is a very superficial kind of red light, green light, yellow light on moving ahead on a project. And sometimes I do a much deeper dive if someone's really, far down the road on making an acquisition or a new development happen. And I try to really get them to think about, well, what kind of investor are you? How long are you going to hold this? Who's going to be in this partnership? Is this something you want for the next 3 generations in your family to have some cash flow for your great grandchildren? Is this something you're trying to flip next year to a REIT? I mean, what are you trying to do? Because all of those have a whole different set of criterion and a whole different set of math sheets. So that's really important. And then I think sometimes when we're looking for either acquisitions or new projects, conversions or developments, we are a little bit, how should I say, drunk happy about the internet, right? Where many people are still thinking, well, I can have a secondary or tertiary location if I'm good on the internet. Well, I don't think that's right. I think this is a location business. Your location has to be fantastic. It's got to be a great location. So that's the other thing I encourage people is to please don't look at crappy locations and think you can fill it with Google AdWords. Please don't do that, because especially if you're a single operator. I mean, if you already have 20% of the market in a given area, yes, you can do that. That's a whole different scenario. But if this is your first, second, or third project, please don't do that to yourself. You'll end up selling the project and making $5 on it. So you don't want to do that.
Do you know what, Tron? This is where we can learn from America, because you guys 10 years ago you could open a self-storage facility almost anywhere and it work out. And this is where we are in the UK right now. And so when I'm talking to people who are starting the first self-storage, yes, if you want to open up on an industrial estate, the back of an industrial estate, guess what? It will work now, but you're not future-proofing yourself for years down the line. Somebody will come and outposition you in 5, in 10, in 7, it doesn't matter, but you will get outpositioned, and therefore you are on the back foot straight away. And then your business is going to be worth less and less and less. So I always say, listen, you've got to plan for the future, make it future proof, and try to get that prime location. We're looking at somewhere now, it probably won't mean a lot to you guys in the US, but it's £12 per square foot. And the most I've ever paid is £9 per square foot. And £12 per square foot, but I'm right next door to a Starbucks. There's a McDonald's being built right next door. And I'm thinking, yes, it's an awful lot of money is £12 per square foot. However, I'm future-proofing it forever and a day, because the traffic is there. There's McDonald's, the Starbucks. They don't position themselves on poor roads. And so, you've got to look at the future proofing. Yes, it will work short term, but we're not in it for the short term. We've got to be in it for long-term gains. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. Right.
And your location is your insurance too. If everything else goes wrong in your marketing plan, or you have a competitor who comes in and clobbers you, your location is your insurance, because if everything else goes away, you still have, 10,000 people a day walking by your store. So, it's smart to invest in the location.
Yeah.
And back to something you said, which I think is astute. Years ago in the States, you could put one any place really, and it would fill up. But what's different about the UK now than the States then is the sophistication level of operators, right? 20 years ago, there was zero sophistication in the self-storage business. You didn't need any, and there wasn't any to get. Now the sophistication level of even smaller operators is so high that if you make a rookie error coming into this, or you think you can do a, if I build it, they will come, you're going to get smashed, because you've got a handful of very large, relatively large, but very sophisticated operators in the UK. And you have a really large group of smaller, but very sophisticated operators in the UK. And same thing in other places like Germany, France, Netherlands, Italy, same thing. They may not be huge operators, but they're very sophisticated. And you can't just come in and take position from them. It's not going to happen. So
let's upset our UK audience now and turn our attentions to the unconference, the Hawaiian unconference. Now, we do get a lot of listeners. Actually, I'm quite surprised by how many listeners are from the USA there.
That's great.
You guys can go to the conference. If you can go to the conference, bloody hell, go for it. We still might get. I'm still hoping that we can get there, because it looks absolutely fantastic. So, in terms of the Hawaiian unconference, then who is it for then, Tron?
So it's for anybody who thinks they're capable of relaxing and enjoying the aloha in Hawaii. So that's the first prerequisite.
I take that box.
Right. If you don't know how to relax and you don't know how to enjoy a beautiful place, please don't come. You will have a miserable time. So, and we will not enjoy you. So don't come. So if you can handle all that, it's for self-storage operators and also for vendors and suppliers in the business to get together for a very special kind of gathering. So it is called an unconference for a good reason, because it's a little bit unstructured, but it's also created by the attendees, right? So we sort of develop the program as we go, and then it constantly changes while we're there as people talk about their concerns and their hopes and dreams and fears and that sort of thing. Mornings, we get together for breakfast, then we do sessions, and then the afternoons and evenings are free for networking and enjoying the island. And it's really all about creating deep connections and really getting close to the people that you know in the business and you work with, because that's where the great innovations really come from. And also the great deals. I mean, we still have people doing deals together who went to the first one of these in 2009. So it's really about the relationship building. And we take an opportunity to do things that are maybe not your standard conference material. We're not so much concerned about, trends that are happening today necessarily, although that's important. But we're really trying to look out into the future too and think about, now that we're together in this beautiful place and we're starting to think, really, what does the future look like? And, how should I, as you talked about before, future-proofing yourself? How should we future-proof things? And then, of course, it's all about the snorkeling and the golf and the pool and all that good stuff. So
yeah, us in the UK, I haven't been able to enjoy that for a long, long time. So for
it's been a terrible stretch. I mean, we're the one little asterisk on all the things we talk about is, this has been a terrible, terrible time with what's happening with COVID for so many people that, we're fortunate that we're in the position where we can keep moving and, keep prospering. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the benefits of being in Hawaii as well, because you will relax, because it's a different way of life out there. It's a different world. I've been there twice and I've absolutely loved it. I went on honeymoon and I went with mum and dad when I was very, very young. And for me, some of the greatest, I suppose, thought processes, ideas that I have come when I'm going for a walk and I'm relaxing, when I'm playing with the kids. And that in itself in Hawaii, you can't help but relax. You can't help but to see things and see the world a different way than you normally would do. And it'll spark thoughts and feelings and ideas completely different to your normal thought process. And so that for me is one of the biggest reasons to go as well, just for your own peace of mind.
Oh, I agree 100%. When you're there, it's very hard to be in your old mindset and worry about the stuff you worry about day to day. It's very hard to do that.
Yeah. Do you have any speakers there currently booked for this conference?
Yeah, so it's really going to be fantastic. One of the guys who's going to come and help us every day there, his name is Brian Massey, and he's the chief scientist at conversionsciences.com. And he has been in the conversion science business since it started, helping big brands and little brands get their websites just right for conversion. It's amazing some of the things he's done. He was at our 2011 Self Storage Unconference and just kind of blew everybody's mind with some of the things he was talking about. And so he's coming back and doing another round for us. That's going to be amazing. We also have Carol Mixon, who, if you're in the self-storage business, if you haven't met Carol and spent time with her, you need to. She is one of the smartest, most experienced, and kindest people in the business. And she's going to be talking about self-storage audits, because as we get further and further into, online automated business, you need to be able to know what you're doing and what you're looking at, and protect yourself from fraud and theft. And she's an amazing person to spend time with. And then Travis Morrow is going to be with us. He's the CEO of Store Local, the self-storage owner co-op in the US. And he's got a long background in development and managing and sales and acquisitions. And he has a wonderful perspective on how he thinks the business is developing. He's going to talk about that. And then also the chief operating officer from Store Local, Anne-Marie DeCoster, is going to be working on future-proof exercises with us. So one of her first jobs was with the consulting firm Booz Allen, where they were working out future-proof future game scenarios in the mid-1980s, trying to figure out what was going to happen. So can you imagine, in the years before the Iron Curtain came down, being in groups of experts trying to future play out what was going to happen in the world? So she's got an amazing background, and we're gonna play out storage games and see what could it look like in 10, 20, 30 years if things go this way or go that way. That'll be fantastic. We're also going to have Danny Akaka Jr. come speak with us. He is one of the go-to people in Hawaii for understanding and learning about and studying Hawaiian culture and history. And he's spent a lifetime doing that. He's going to talk to us about some of the reasons why Hawaii is such a special and interesting place to go to. And so those are kind of the main things. And it's going to be tremendous, really.
Oh, it sounds like you've got all bases covered. First of all, websites. I'm a massive advocate for websites, because if you have a good website, then that increases your conversion rate. It does the job for you. Well, it helps you, assists you do the job in getting customers, converting them to the quotes, the leads, to actual customers. And so I believe that a website isn't it's not an expense, it's an investment. And then people just need to change the way they think about website costs, because for me, it's definitely an investment. Even the content, the material we put on there, how we say things as well is so important. And we spent an ungodly amount of money on that just to make sure that we answer any questions that people have the right way, to put their mind at rest, so they're more likely to reserve with us and to become a customer. And then Travis Morrow, he's been on the podcast twice, and I've actually debated him on stage about automation.
I was there for that. That was good. That was a good debate. I enjoyed that.
Morning. Yeah. Travis is an absolute wonderful guy, and he's always so cool as well. He just always looks so I don't know, just great. debonair. And so, yeah, it sounds like you've got all bases covered there. How many people usually attend this, Tron?
So in the past, we've been around 50-ish. We're capping it at 100 this year because it needs to be a smaller group. That's how we maintain the intimacy and keep the atmosphere right. So it's pretty amazing.
And what made you start this conference then in 2009? Because this Hawaii Unconference, it sounds to me like an absolute no-brainer. What was the idea behind it?
So that's a wonderful question, and I should have already told you that. So thanks for reminding me. So I don't know if you remember 2007 and 2008, they were pretty ugly here in the States. And a lot of us just really had no idea what was going on and what we were supposed to do. And at the time, I was also running the large call center, and all of my clients were scratching their heads and trying to figure out what was next. And I had always wanted to go to Hawaii. I'd heard it was fabulous. And so I thought, well, what's the best thing to do? If everyone's stressed and confused and doesn't know what to do, the best thing to do is to get a bunch of us together on the Big Island, sequester ourselves for a week in paradise and figure it out. And that's what we did. It was just amazing.
It sounds brilliant. So if people wanted to find out more about it, and UK listeners, I am still, fingers crossed, I am still going. The family want to go. My mum and dad want to go. So hopefully, if we're allowed, I will be there. If people want to find out more about it, Tron, where would they go?
So it's HawaiiUnconference.com. So just HawaiiUnconference.com. Yeah. So everybody get your vaccines, be careful, do what you have to do. Let's get through this thing. Yeah. If you're a vaccine maker, make more of it, get more of it out, please. And we've got lots of places that haven't gotten any vaccines yet. Let's get shots in arms so selfishly we can go to Hawaii, but also, we can turn things around, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So final question from me, Tron, is I've just learned that you do something called Troncast, your own podcast. So it's Troncast. I absolutely love the name. What is that about?
It tends to be just whatever I feel like talking about. So sometimes I talk about sales. Sometimes I talk about society. Sometimes I talk about business. I even talk about self-storage, but that's, kind of whatever I feel like talking about. And I'm like you, I'm lucky. I know lots of interesting people, and, sometimes a longer discussion is required, and a podcast is a great way to do that. I like to focus on leadership on the podcast because that's such an important topic. And when that's done well, things are amazing. I'm also a bit of a contrarian sometimes. So I also like to kind of focus on some of the things that we think are correct, our assumptions that really are probably stupid assumptions. So I try to focus on those a little bit. And then sometimes just whatever I feel like talking about. But it's a blast. And being on podcasts is great. I mean, I've got a friend in the UK I'm on a podcast with right now. What amazing world, right, Dean?
I was just thinking, who's that guy? Who's that? Oh, it's me.
Right, it's you. Yeah.
Well, Tron, thank you so much for your time today, buddy. If people wanted to find out more about you, where would they go?
So the easiest things would be to go to LinkedIn and look for me. I'm the only Tron Jordheim on there, I think. Or go to selfstoragestrategies.com, and I'll be glad to visit.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to all them website links and links. We'll put a link at the bottom of this podcast. Jojo, my awesome virtual assistant, will do that for us. So Tron, all that's left to say is thank you, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure again. We should do this once a year, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person again this year.
Hey, if it works out, you can do your October podcasts on the Big Island, right on the beach with a little sea breeze interference on the mic. That would be perfect, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, you've already sold me, buddy. Absolutely. I would love to do that. Yeah, absolutely. So, Tron, thank you for your time, buddy.
You're welcome, my friend. See you soon. Take care.